Good afternoon. Welcome back to Being the Marshmallow, Living and Coping with PTSD. I am, as always, Bob Wagner. Blimey and Peter taking the day off. They didn't really have a lot to say on today's subject, so they're off doing their own thing. This is the second in a series that we're doing on weapons and how they relate to mental illness. Last week I spoke very specifically about guns, and particularly the view in certain quarters that if you are mentally ill, quote-unquote, you don't need a gun. This is a phrase that has actually been used to me in conversation multiple times. Bob, if you're mentally ill, you don't need a gun. Even though here in the United States it is an expressly enumerated right that even being mentally ill, I get to own guns, and in my home state of Minnesota, if I take certain steps, I have the right to carry them outside of the home. But there is a certain perception among certain people that if you have a medical condition that affects your mind and your emotional state, you don't need to express this, you don't need to fully exercise that specific civil liberty. All right, obviously, I've got my own opinions on the matter, and you can probably guess what they are, but if you want to revisit them, go check out last week's episode. Excuse me. This week, I want to get more into talking about arms in general, okay? Knives, blunt instruments, chemical agents, things of that nature. And I want to talk about how they relate to living with a mental illness and how they can actually make it easier to cope, okay? Before I do that, I want to cover a couple of points. If you choose to carry a weapon, first off, obey your local laws. Even if you think they're stupid, even if you think they are unconstitutional, obey your local laws. Jail sucks, okay? And if you break the law with a weapon, you are going to jail. The cops have no sense of humor on these matters, all right? And they don't care about, well, I didn't know, okay? So obey your local laws. If your local laws say you can only carry a 4-inch knife, do not go out and get a 6-inch knife. If your local laws say you're not allowed to carry firearms, do not bloody carry a gun, okay? Because I don't care about this meme-tastic buzzword BS. I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. You know what? That sounds really great until they ship your ass off to the state pen, okay? Obey the local laws. I personally believe that universal carry should be just an accepted part of American culture, but I'm not carrying my gun outside of the house except to go to the range until I have my CCW, and neither should you. Okay, and this applies to everything. Pepper spray, knives, batons. Obey the law. Or accept ownership of the fact that failure to do so will have very serious consequences. Next, know what you're doing with the weapon. Doesn't matter, again, what it is. There's an old saying, the weapon you do not know how to use belongs to your enemy. In simple terms, this means that if you personally deploy a weapon defensively and you don't know how to handle it, it can get taken away from you. The other guy can use it against you, and you will find yourself in a world of grief. So, obey the laws. Learn how to use whatever you carry effectively, learn its strengths and weaknesses, and plot your defensive strategies accordingly. Third, if you are under a therapist's care, while your therapist should not be the person making the final decision on this matter, you should talk to them about it, consult with them. That is their function. That is the nature of your relationship. They are a mental health consultant. Discuss this matter with them. See what they have to say on the matter, and then make your own decision. And when you do, do so in full knowledge and ownership of what the potential fallout may or may not be. So there's that. So let's talk about why a person would want to carry a weapon, okay? Why would a mentally ill person want to carry a weapon? Well, why would anybody want to carry a weapon? First off, violent crime is a thing. It is a statistic here in the United States that violent crime is actually at a 10-year low. But it doesn't change the fact that muggings and rapes and murders still happen. People still get kidnapped, people still get carjacked, houses still get broken into. Violent crime is still a thing, and speaking as somebody who has been on the wrong end of it a couple of times, it's a drag, okay? Nobody wants to be mugged, nobody wants to be assaulted, nobody wants to get dead. So that is the reason why anybody with a mental illness would want to carry a weapon. Simple terms, same reason anybody without would want to. But there's more to it than that in our case. In our case, there's actually some therapeutic applications. To begin with, if you have a trauma disorder or an anxiety disorder such as PTSD, by definition, the world feels like a much less safe place, okay? That's why we cannot sit in a movie theater in the middle of the theater where our neurotypical neighbor can easily do so, because we feel less safe. We feel like I'm going to get jumped if I sit in this middle of the theater seat, whereas my neighbor who doesn't have this is going to be like, well, yeah, okay, cool. Where's the, give me the popcorn. Let's start the show. They don't think anything of it, but we feel less safe. Having a weapon on you makes you feel more safe. It has since the earliest days of our species, ever since the first one of us picked up a stick and hit a predator in the face with it, and the predator ran off to seek easier lunch, we have associated having ready access to a weapon with safety, okay? Because those of us who carried and utilized weapons tended to live long enough to pass on our DNA and to teach these things to our young. And frankly, it just makes good sense if you think about it. I don't care how hardcore you are. I don't care if you're Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee with a set of nunchucks was orders of magnitude more dangerous than Bruce Lee with just his bare hands, okay? And that applies to regular people, schmuck like me, regular dude on the street like you, okay? So by having access to something that you can use to defend yourselves, to tip the odds in your favor, you are going to feel more safe. And you don't even actually have to pull it, okay? You may have just a general anxiety attack because, all of a sudden, boom, hey, for no reason, the universe feels like a more dangerous than usual place. And I speak from experience when I tell you that simply being able to put my hands on a blade, and I've talked to several other people who've had this experience, who have PTSD, simply being able to touch that, it doesn't eliminate the anxiety disorder, but it does help reduce it, because here is tangible proof that if actual danger presents itself, you are better able to prevent it from affecting you. You're better able to stop yourself from getting hurt or killed, okay? There's also a matter of control. When we suffer a traumatic experience, we are by definition the universe is outside of our control, all right? Whether it's a fire or combat or assault or watching somebody we care about get killed, we develop a trauma disorders essentially because we were not in control of our environment. Having something like a knife or pepper spray or a baton enables us to exert control on our environment. And so, by definition, it makes it easier for us to cope with the symptoms, because it's like, okay, fine, this thing here, this sharp piece of metal or this blunt piece of metal, which I can use to discourage somebody from bothering me, that enables me to impose my will on the universe, and it makes it less likely for the universe to impose its will, and that levels us out, okay? Another thing is something called mindfulness. When you get into therapy particularly for trauma disorders that have hallucinatory elements to them or dissociative elements to them, such as PTSD, there's a lot of talk about mindfulness. And what that means is being present in the here and now, not allowing yourself to get ripped loose in time from this moment and dragged back to the time of your trauma, okay? Having a weapon on you forces mindfulness to become a daily habit, okay? You have to be aware of where this thing is at all times, not just because of you want to know where it is in the event that somebody tries to hurt you and you have to deploy it in your own defense or the defense of someone else, but because you don't want to misplace this, okay? Even a knife this big, and I actually own knives, a couple of knives this big, and I carry them for defensive purposes, can kill somebody. And you don't want to misplace that. You don't want it, to fall out of your pocket or your purse and wind up somewhere where somebody who doesn't know what the hell they're doing and has no business handling such a thing can get hold of it and injure themselves or somebody else, okay? So it forces you to habitually be aware of what is going on in the here and now. That anchors you in the present, and it makes it more difficult for the hallucinations and for the flashbacks to occur. I know that I personally tend to be less prone to these things when I'm carrying, because I have to maintain an awareness of my body. I have to know, okay, this is here, this is there. And the only way to do that is to stay anchored in the moment. All right? Those are the big things. And then that bleeds over into your coping skills, into your coping habits. It becomes a situation where, because you are habituated to staying anchored in the present, when you find yourself unmoored, when you find yourself dragged back by the disease to the moment of your trauma, it becomes much easier for you to bring yourself back, because of the fact that you are simply more used to anchoring yourself in the present than you otherwise would be. So those are some of the reasons why we would want to carry a weapon. And it also forces us to work our rational mind much more. Carrying a weapon is a big responsibility. I'm not going to lie to you. It's a huge responsibility. Anybody who thinks differently has no business doing so. And so we tend to be more prone, more habituated to engaging our cognitive reasoning, problem-solving parts of our brain, which is not where the PTSD happens. Problem solving, as I've said, happens up here. Planning what to do happens up here. PTSD happens back here, all right? And when you carry a weapon, you have to be asking yourself, well, what if I have to do this? You have to have a plan in place. You have to be a logical, problem-solving creature. You have to say, well, if something comes up and I have to use this, under what circumstances is it acceptable? Okay? That programs your brain to be more here, to be more of a tool-using sentient creature and less of a terrified primate. So those are the reasons why we would want to carry a weapon. Those are the reasons why it can actually prove beneficial within the context of a mental illness. And ultimately, the decision is yours. I'm not going to tell you to run out and get a blade or get a gun. That is a personal decision. I am simply here to present an argument as to what some of the potential benefits are for a person who chooses to carry some sort of personal arms. Okay? It makes you feel safer. It forces you to be more present in the here and now, because having a weapon is a very big responsibility, and you need to be aware of where it is at all times. And it also forces you to have a plan in place. How am I going to use it? Under what circumstances am I going to use it? Under what circumstances am I not going to use it? This is all cognitive stuff, and it makes it harder for the more primal aspects of our mind to be preeminent, which is what happens when we have a PTSD episode. Anything more on the subject, I believe, would be repeating myself, and so I'm going to leave it at that. This is a personal decision. I will leave it to you, the viewer, to make it. Treat it with the gravity and responsibility with which it is, and best fortune to you. Hopefully, if you do choose to carry a weapon, I pray that you never, ever have to use it. I pray that you never find yourself in circumstances where you are obliged to deploy it. And be safe, be healthy, be here next week for another episode. Take care. Bye-bye.